Hello everybody and welcome back to Kerbal Space Program, where we need to upgrade our launch pad a little bit. It's level 1 right now, and we definitely need that to be at least at level 2. So in order to launch our second iteration of our rocket, which is currently not loaded, there we go. In order to launch this second iteration of our rocket, which is version 1X. Don't ask me. Actually, do ask me. The reason why the second version is version 1X is because it's 0 indexed. Because that's the way I think. So we should now be able to launch this, and yeah, we can indeed. So our goal is to orbit Kerbal. That said, I am slightly concerned about the lack of struts with our booster stages here. So that's going to be exciting. Now, I want to double check our staging here. That looks fine. I don't want to fire this engine until these fall off. That'll be okay. Yeah, that all looks good. So let's go ahead and launch this. We are aiming for orbit. That was interesting. I'm pretty sure... Okay, that's different. So, I hit my mute button, cleared my throat, and the mute button, for the duration of the throat clear, stopped being pressed. And then after the throat clear, resumed being pressed again. That was bizarre. Well, I apologize for the throat clear without the mute button there. I was pressing the button, but I guess, lesson learned, it doesn't like to be pressed whilst loading in KSP. We did get some free science from that, though, so we'll just go ahead and recover this vessel. There we go. Excellent. So we got a little bit of science from that, and we will go ahead and launch this one more time. I'm going to try this again. Mute. Yeah, so I figured it out. There's a period there in the loading screen where the game briefly stops responding. And during that time, it loses focus, which causes Windows to register the mute button as being released. Okay, well, now I know. So, I will be able to time my mutes a little bit differently, like right now when we're launching. There, perfect. We'll grab these scans. We'll grab all of this, actually. And I'm slightly impressed by how resilient this loadout is in terms of its lack of pointing towards the center core. That's nice. I do want to not bomb the KSC, if at all possible. So I'm just ever so slightly tilting over here. We have very little control over these engines, so we definitely need to be careful. Off we go. Fantastic. They even blew themselves up, which is almost ideal. We'll go ahead and grab the pilot's flight report. That'll be fine. Okay, what is our current apoapsis? Plenty high. We actually need to be going directly over here. We're going quite quickly, but we need to be burning straight for the horizon right now. Okay. Excellent. Our apoapsis is going up currently. So I'm going to cut the throttle for a little bit here. We're just going to coast until we exit the atmosphere. We've got plenty of delta V for this. This is definitely going to make it into orbit. Is it going to make it home? Yeah, I think it will. But like I said, I'm just cutting the throttle for now. We're almost out of the atmosphere. We're going to resume burning now. Excellent. I'm trying not to push up the apoapsis too much. get us going a little bit more horizontally and less vertically right now. Targeting about a 90-kilometer orbit should be fine. As we approach it, we should, of course, be heading a little bit more towards prograde. Actually, a little more away from prograde right now. We're still going up a little high. Okay, the apoapsis is getting pretty far away, and we are also starting to run a little low on fuel. So we are just going to go ahead and drift towards the apoapsis a little bit. This is always a little difficult without proper instruments. We don't yet have the tech for those, but we're just going to do a little bit more of a burn over here. We can see our periapsis is going to be coming up quite quickly. I'm going to start that burn in, I think, once we hit 90 kilometers. So just a few seconds here. Right now. Now you'll notice I'm not doing much of a burn here. The apoapsis was still pushing ahead, so that means that that was a little too early on the burn. Normally I'd use a maneuver node for this. We don't have access to maneuver nodes yet. We don't even know how long it is until the apoapsis, technically speaking. So let's just reorient back to prograde. Again, we don't have an automated system to do this for us. This will all be coming soon enough. How's this looking? Yeah, that's looking about right for the periapsis coming up. Okay, we're officially in orbit. Fantastic. Okay, so we definitely need that experimental storage module. That would sure be nice. And we're going to be just coming down at the apoapsis. We're going to do a quick burn retrograde to bring our periapsis down a little bit. And given our current re-entry profile, well, given our previous re-entry profile, we can afford to come down pretty steeply. Because just this slows down pretty quickly. Of course, we do have the service bay now. That is an addition. So we can't come down quite as steeply as we could before, and still survive, but we can come down fairly steeply. Let's go ahead and warp forward. We don't have access to warp 2 here yet. And actually, I don't want you to stop time warping just yet. We'll want that later on one of our future flights, but not right now. Okay. So we're basically at the apoapsis. We're a little bit before it. I do want to have the periapsis open, and we should be lined up retrograde, which we now are. Perfect. And we're just going to lower this periapsis down. I'm thinking to somewhere like 20 kilometers is what I'm thinking. Maybe a little further. That'll do. We've still got 377 meters per second. We can burn that off as a re-entry burn if we decide we need to. Also, I did lower the brightness. I saw you guys' comments and lowered the brightness by about 10%. Let me know if this is about right. It looks okay on my screen when we're in the darkness like this. But who knows what it's going to look like after YouTube compression. And of course, this is about the worst case scenario here for the ambient light situation. So this would be a good situation to benchmark against. The brightness when we are landing is going to be another thing entirely, because we're going to be coming down on the day side for sure. But we are right now pretty heavily in the night side. And we're just going to warp forward a little bit. Okay, we're now in the atmosphere. We're going to orient retrograde. Just pure retrograde. And we want to hold off on this re-entry burn as long as possible. We're a long ways from our periapsis right now. If we were to burn here, it would move the periapsis to be roughly over here, which isn't necessarily the worst thing considering the KSC is over here. But I also kind of don't want that to be the case. We're not targeting any particular area to come down, so for right now, here we go, re-entry. We're going to get some atmospheric effects here pretty soon. And we'll get to have a decent brightness benchmark on that. So hopefully this all turns out reasonably okay in terms of brightness levels. It's certainly a little bit brighter than it used to be, but hopefully not too bright. I'm just trying to keep us retrograde right now. We don't have any automated system for that, so anytime you see this SAS button flicker, just making a small manual adjustment. Excellent. We are currently entering the atmosphere. I mean, we've been in the atmosphere for 12 kilometers. We're starting to enter some actual thick portions of the atmosphere, though. You can see our periapsis is dropping pretty appreciably. Our apoapsis is as well. Our periapsis is going to be moving this way and our apoapsis this way. It won't be long, and the periapsis will be within the... probably the ocean over here is where we're probably going to end up landing. So it'll be morning where we land. Not exactly necessarily full day, but certainly morning. I'm going to go ahead and physics warp a little bit here. I don't like physics warping these re-entries, so now that we're getting atmospheric effects, I'm going to stop that because we need to hold right here. We do still have 400 meters per second that we can burn, and if we do that, that'll basically lock us into landing in this ocean, which I think is probably a good idea. But I'm not going to burn it quite yet. Periapsis is still a little over this cove. It's coming this way. Yeah, let's actually go ahead and burn it. Right now. Well, we're still high enough up for this engine to have some level of specific impulse. That is certainly better. So we will now go ahead and ditch this stage. Fantastic. That is now out of here. And we have much better control over the capsule. But we need to slow down enough to get these nerfed drogue chutes fired. It shouldn't be a big deal. Like, this is a pretty shallow trajectory. We are coming in relatively quickly, but... I mean, maybe I burned off too much horizontal speed. But I think we're going to be okay. Like, we're slowing down this quickly at 35 kilometers above the surface. We've still got a ways ahead of us, so I think that'll be fine. And you may be asking, is this the only flight planned for the 1X? No. This is going to do most of our initial science. So we're going to do probably 3 or 4 launches. We'll see what we get for contracts, but probably 3 or 4 launches with the 1X before we design the 2X. And at some point we're going to have to switch off of the X nomenclature, because at some point it's going to become no longer experimental. Are we actually going to be landing on the dark side? I think we barely are. Okay, we're slowing down plenty quickly, though. We're going to land in the ocean, as expected. Drogue chutes are now safe to deploy. So we shall. And with that, we will begin the physics warp. Main chute is safe to deploy. SAS can go off. Okay, well, this is definitely going to be a good test of the brightness. There's no doubt about that. So let me know if this brightness is more correct. As soon as we land here, we will be able to head back to where it's relatively bright, assuming it's daytime at the KSC right now. I think it is. It is, but not for much longer. We could always warp till morning, though. So, all things considered, that was a very successful first flight, or rather first orbital flight. We technically did have a first suborbital flight. But our second flight was, of course, an orbital one, and that was very successful indeed. So we'll just touch this on down, and I'm going to stop the physics warp right as we're impacting the water here. Perfect. And yes, I could have jettisoned my heat shield. There's no point right now. So we can't EVA report? Hang on. We should be able to get an EVA report. Yeah. Perfect. So we'll go ahead and recover this. And our overall goal right now definitely has to be, as far as science is concerned, our overall goal definitely has to be unlocking this. And I mean, the Science Junior is nice too. So we're going to go ahead and grab that. And now we're going to make a small iteration on the Grasshopper 1X. We're going to call this guy... I mean, this is still going to be the Grasshopper 1, but we are going to call this the Grasshopper 1I for iteration. What if that was a Roman numeral? Like this. That nomenclature would get really awkward really quickly, and I love it. We're doing it. It's going to be gloriously awkward. Okay, so we're going to take our main stage here and the heat shield. We're going to move this down. We need to look at the crash tolerance of the service bay. 14 meters per second versus the Science Junior, which I believe is far lower than that, 6. Yes. So the Science Junior will go there, and then we will place the heat shield underneath the service module here. Connect the main stage in like that. And then we will place the experiment storage unit right here. Now let's open up the service bay, and let's just see. Let's see, we've got a press mat barometer, we've got a 2-hot thermometer. We've actually got all of these experiments in there, so that's fine. Now we still don't have access to struts, but that is, again, completely fine. So that's just a very small iteration on this, and it will lower our overall delta V. So what is our overall delta V here? Is that visible in here? Or I guess it's right here. I'm an idiot. I should have remembered that. Yeah, so we've got enough delta V to still get to orbit. Not necessarily to get anywhere super special other than orbit, but we can get there. Now, I do think Jebediah is skill 1. We should probably get Valentina in here, just so that she can get some XP. There we go. And let's go ahead and check in on a couple of things here at the KSC. And it is currently, I guess, like early evening. So you'll have to let me know how this brightness is. We could always warp until next morning, and I think I'm actually going to do that. Just so we can see how this is looking brightness-wise. Okay, let's hop into, not the R&D, let's actually hop into mission control, because explore the moon. That's just a flyby? Do we have the Delta V to pull that off? Well, not without maneuver nodes, I can tell you that. It's also slightly awkward that our solid rocket motors put us into roughly 100 kilometer altitude without having much for horizontal velocity, we're probably going to have to try to do a bit more aggressive of a gravity turn. We'll see how that ends up going. That said, any of these other things that we're interested in doing? Not immediately. So we'll leave that for now. And this is the astronaut complex. I meant to hop into the administration building because specifically I want to put in an unpaid research program. And the most we can put in right now is a 25% commitment. So that'll take 25% of our reputation and yield us science. Done. We can also upgrade the tracking station for Patch Conics, but we would also need to upgrade the mission control for flight planning. That would cost us a total of $225,000, and yeah, we're totally doing it. That is a very worthwhile investment right there. Okay, so I think we are pretty much ready for another launch. The question is, are we going for the moon flyby here? I feel like the answer is no, because we do still have several launches ahead of us to grab Science Junior and other data. Now, one thing that I would very much like to do before we head out, if we have the money, is upgrade the astronaut complex just once here. At 75 grand, we can afford that. That allows us to EVA, and that will be a very big boost to our science. EVAing is, of course, a very handy thing to be able to do. So we will go ahead and launch the Grasshopper 1I for the first iteration of this particular rocket. And this is just our intro rocket. This is by no means going to be our final design. So we'll just run our material study. We'll keep that experiment, recover it. Excellent. Good job, Valentina. That's all we needed from you. You're fired. And by that I mean on a rocket straight up in the air. And then over a bit, because you're going into orbit. Excellent. Okay, so we got a little bit of science there. Not, I think, enough to buy anything. The question is, what are we going for next? General construction and advanced rocketry are both very, very important to us right now. So we may be going for those relatively shortly. However, it is about time to put a cut in here. It's like a minute or two early, but we're basically in between missions right now, so I think I'm going to go ahead and do it. You can leave your offerings to the engagement gods in the form of likes, comments, subscribes, and bell ringings, and please let me know about the current brightness levels. I will see you all next time.